It's a great pleasure for me to be addressing you all at the Global Alliance of Impact Lawyers. The law has a very big role to play in what I perceive to be a massive paradigm shift that is in the process of occurring before our eyes. And so I welcome this opportunity to give you my perspective on the changes around us and to highlight some of the issues concerning the law that I perceive and which will no doubt be looked at in the panel that follows my comments. We're all aware, or we wouldn't be here today, I suppose, talking about impact, that something fundamental is changing in our world. I see a combination of three major forces which are at work to improve our world. The first major force, which I'm sure all of us who have children are familiar with, is a change in values which started with younger generations that refused, starting a decade and a half ago, to purchase the products of certain companies or to work for them because they were creating environmental or social harm. And these changes in values had huge implications for businesses, and that wasn't lost on investors. And so we saw investors beginning to worry about the implications of these changes in values for the revenues and profits of different types of companies. And this has led now to $40 trillion of investment that is going in the direction of what's known as ESG, environmental, social, and governance investment. These huge flows have been driven by the realization of these changes in values, but also by changes in values among investors. And so most of that $40 trillion of ESG money is being channeled to ESG generating companies by asset managers. But we can see asset owners now beginning to follow suit, as I say and show in my book, Impact, subtitle Reshaping Capitalism to Drive Real Change. The area of impact investing proper, which I define and is defined today as having the intention that ESG investment has to create more positive impact, but also measuring the impacts created. That area today is already over $2 trillion. Just last year, there was $1 trillion issued in sustainability-linked bonds and sustainability-linked loans. So no one can argue anymore, they did a few years ago, that we're dealing with a flash in the pan and that this change isn't here to stay. The second major force changing our world is the force of technology. The leaps of technology through artificial intelligence, through machine learning, through the convergence of these technologies with high computing power and progress in deciphering the human genome, enable us to deliver impacts today globally in ways that humanity could never previously contemplate. And we see entrepreneurs across the world, and Elon Musk is a very good example of one, creating new business models that seek to create positive impacts, or at the very least, reduce negative impacts in existing organizations' business models and derive the benefit of being able to attract consumers, talent, and investors. We see the expression of this technological disruption coming in almost every field. We see it in fintech, which is beginning to upend our existing banking practices. We see it in remote learning. We see it in remote health. We see it in the fields of clean energy. We see it absolutely everywhere, that there are major negative consequences being created by companies, and where entrepreneurs see an opportunity to exploit innovation to eliminate those consequences and bring solutions to the great challenges we face. And the third major force, which is particularly relevant to our discussions today, is the force of increased transparency on the impacts created by companies. Companies create impacts in three major, or four major ways, should I say. Three of them are within the firm. They are the impacts created by the operations of a company on the environment. They are the employment practices that create impacts on the lives of people. And they are the products that create impacts on people and planet, which companies manufacture. And the fourth dimension is, of course, supply chain impacts. An effort that I'm proud to chair at Harvard Business School called the Impact Weighted Accounts Initiative. You can all access it at HBS IWA, has put in monetary terms the impacts of 3,000 companies on the environment and of 2,600 companies on employment. You can see from these numbers a picture emerging, and very deep insights are revealed. Of the 3,000 companies in the Harvard dataset, 450 create more environmental damage in a year than they make in profit. 1,000 create environmental damage of 25% or more of their profit in a year. So 2/3 of companies create less than a quarter of their profit in damage. And together, these 3,000 companies create $4 trillion worth of environmental damage in a single year. Revealing those types of insights goes even further, because when you begin to analyze the relationship between impacts, environmental impacts, and stock prices, you begin to see a correlation between companies that pollute more being worth less on the stock exchange. So the weight of the $40 trillion of ESG money and the $2 trillion of impact money today has tilted the scales in favor of companies that, in the terms that I define in my book, Impact, optimize risk, return, and impact, rather than just optimizing risk and return. If you take these three forces together, you can see that they are being driven today into the regulatory sphere by the flow of data to which I have been referring. The more data, such as the Harvard data, flows and is shown to be price sensitive, the greater the pressure on regulators to step in order to maintain orderly markets. And so it isn't at all surprising for me that we see IFRSF, which is responsible for all financial accounting across the world except for the USA, establish now an international sustainable standards board to standardize the metrics for impact that is created on the environment as well as on people. And I encourage all of you to go to the G7 Impact Task Force report that was published in mid-December. Its title is Time to Deliver. And that report, which involved 120 sophisticated people from almost every professional area, and business and investment and government and academia and so on, that report basically says we are moving towards impact accounting. And the next step in achieving that is standardizing not just the metrics of impact as the ISSB is doing, but the valuation of impacts as well. So my view is that these regulatory pressures within the next 3 to 5 years, in my view, by 25, are going to lead to the mandatory publication of impact statements by companies that show their revenues, their costs, and their different impacts in monetary terms. That effectively moves the goalposts for business and for investment, and has deep implications for our current legal approach to the role and the purpose of corporations. Because the shift from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism introduces a new concept. Some have called it the concept of fairness, I suppose, in a similar way that equity came into the legal system some centuries ago. The concept of fairness, how fairly companies treat the environment and people, is now coming into the world of business and investment. And that implies changes in the way in which contracts are drawn up and the way in which lawsuits are positioned. We've seen Shell be obligated by a court in the Netherlands to reduce its carbon emissions by 40% by the end of the decade. And I suspect this is the first of many such judgments because of the trends that I have been describing. So I think your meeting is of the greatest significance. We need to work out, as the panel that follows me is going to be debating, what is the regulatory endgame for a just transition? And I wish you well in developing the concepts and frameworks that we need to buttress the new role of corporations, whose purpose is not just to maximize profit, but to deliver profit and impact. In economic terms, to paraphrase Adam Smith's line about the invisible hand of markets, impact is the invisible heart of markets that is coming to shift our economic paradigm in the direction of bringing solutions to the great social and environmental challenges we face, rather than create and aggravate them. I wish you well in your work and look forward to hearing the result of your deliberations. Thank you.